Ooh, I'm spoiling you all this week. 2 videos in a row about Pathfinder's new Howl of the Wilds. And today we are looking at a very anticipated ancestry. The awakened animal. I mean, who wouldn't want to play as the famous Sir Barrington? Or recreate the hit movie Cats and Dogs? Or invite the famous Dungeons and Dragons YouTuber Crit Crab to play in a Pathfinder game? Surely he would like to play as his avatar. Anywho, shall we begin? Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drayhon, and welcome back to Pathfinder Hero Frame, where we take a look at the different ancestries within Pathfinder 2nd Edition and see what backgrounds and classes best fit with the lore of that ancestry. And today we are taking a look once again at Howl of the Wilds and seeing what the awakened animal has for us. Now, I must admit, I was definitely looking forward to this animal, this ancestry, as it is something that a lot of fans of Dungeons and Dragons wanted. Just about every single story or post I see is of someone playing as an animal. Not a druid transformed into an animal, but as an animal. And I must say, I was a bit disappointed with the lore of the awakened animal. While, yes, we do have the animal becoming sentient, like with the spell Awaken Animal, and it actually does go into a little bit of detail asking the question, what happens when you do awaken an animal? How does it feel about becoming sentient? Is it able to integrate back into its own kind with the rest of its fellow brethren? Or does it integrate into society with the rest of the humanoids? That's not what I was disappointed about. What I was disappointed about was the other side of the coin not being represented here. The humanoid being cursed with an animal form. Your Princess and the Frog, your Emperor's New Groove, or your Tobias from Animorphs. Anyone remember that series? Anywho, yeah, I just was a little bit disappointed with this ancestry only representing half of the spectrum. You would think having the cursed with an animal form would be represented, but it wasn't. I mean, I would definitely let my players run their character like that, because it's a very famous trope within fantasy. You peeve off a witch and now you have the form of a guinea pig. Or you are cursed to be a frog, or what have you. The animal gaining sentience is fine and all, it's great. But the whole reason for that trope existing is the other side of the coin. Being cursed with an animal form, and it just wasn't represented in the lore of the awakened animal. But anyway, enough of my criticisms of this ancestry. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at what we do have in the lore and see what type of characters we can create. Starting things off with our 4 heritages, we have the climbing animal, the flying animal, the running animal, and the swimming animal. Now, what I do find hilarious here is that you could technically have any form of animal you want. You can have a monkey, you can have a bird, a flying squirrel, a cheetah, a roadrunner, a turtle, or a hippopotamus. Which makes it definitely hilarious considering that I created my own homebrew ancestry not too long before the release of this book. Check out those 2 videos if you want to learn more. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the backgrounds. Now, the backgrounds that I thought would make sense for the awakened animal were mostly implied backgrounds, like the animal whisperer, the blessed, cursed, feral child, feybound, the hunter, magical experiments, nomad, runner, scout, spotter, normal things that an animal would automatically have as a background, whether it just be born that way in the case of the feral child, or being a job they had while they were non-sentient, like the scout, or something they just did naturally, like with the scavenger. But then once you become sentient, you could be one way or the other about it. You could be blessed, or you could find yourself being cursed with sentience, like we just discussed earlier. You could just roll with it and just be an emissary or a translator, being able to go back and forth between society and the natural world, or you could be against the whole thing, being anti-magical or witch-weary. Furthermore, you could even be actively against society itself, being an anti-tech activist, like a lot of people are today. Another good one was the magical experiment, but also one that I thought would be interesting was the unremarkable. This would tie into your animal nature, because normally when someone were to look into your eyes, they can actually tell someone something is different about you. But with the unremarkable background, you could probably blend in a little bit better, so long as you don't speak. Which I think would be interesting. Another background that I thought would work would be wished alive. This is kind of typical in certain media, where the child wishes that their best friend could speak an actual human language. But according to Wished Alive, it is actually a construct, like a doll or a stuffed toy, which could actually work as well. Like, what's a famous animal that was a stuffed animal? Winnie the Pooh? Paddington Bear? Wasn't he a stuffed animal? I don't remember, but there are a couple of them out there like that, if I do remember correctly. Another one that would fit, this is more for a specific heritage, but for a swimming animal, the undersea enthusiast would work rather well as well. Moving on to classes. We don't have any recommended classes, but I thought the barbarian, druid, fighter, ranger, and monk would be your most common classes. If you're going for more of a spellcaster, the druid most definitely would work, but also the sorcerer and warlock would work well for a spellcasting awakened animal, especially if you're looking more for the theme of an animal familiar gaining sentience, since they are gaining powers from their wizard companion. Anyway, let's take a closer look at each of the classes and see just what subclasses would work for the awakened animal. Starting things off with the barbarian, the instincts that fit rather well obviously are going to be the animal, but also the fury and superstition instinct. This is because the superstition instinct goes well with that anti-magical background that we talked about, where they don't like magic or just don't believe in magic, but definitely leading more towards being strongly against magic, especially after being awakened against their will. Moving on to the bard. I would say the muse of the polymath and the zoophonic. That's right, zoophonic. I actually looked back at Howl of the Wild, and it's a C, not an A. I somehow misspelled it in the previous video, but it is zoophonic. Anyway, the zoophonic bard is going to be the most obvious because, animals. But the polymath also seemed to do rather well with this connection as well. Moving on to the cleric, of course going with the doctrine of the cloistered scholar, though a war priest could fit as well. The deities that were recommended to us were, first off, any deity that their companions would serve. So if you had a wizard who served, I don't know, we'll say Desna, then there is a likelihood that the awakened animal will serve Desna. But other than that, some other deities that they recommend are, of course, Gozre, as well as Lamashtu for some reason. That one was actually surprising. Though, considering the lore of Lamashtu, how she was able to kill a deity who had domain over beasts, it kind of makes sense. But another one that surprised me was Rovagug, the destroyer god who wants to destroy everything. That one really surprised me, but it was a recommended deity for an awakened animal. I'm sure you can bring up your own reasons for your awakened animal to want to serve a god of destruction, but I thought it would be good to mention here. Moving on to the druid, this one was a bit of a stretch, but I thought it would work for a awakened animal to become a druid, more specifically a druidic order of the animal, of course, leaf, and the untamed. The untamed and leaf would probably be more common, and if you're a swimming animal, the more common druid class, a subclass for you, would probably be the Order of the Wave. Moving on to the rogue. This would be another one that would definitely be a common class, especially if you're something like a raccoon, or a possum, or a sneaky snake. I would say the racket of the mastermind, ruffian, or the thief would work rather well. Moving on to the sorcerer, the bloodline of the Fae and the hag would work rather well. The Fae tying into how some animals will awaken because of some Fae magic, and the hag kind of tying into the animal companion thing, but also to the less represented humanoid cursed into animal form. Moving on to the witch, the patron themes that I thought would work well are the Devourer of Decay for your hyenas or vultures or other scavengers, the theme of the Pax, and the Wilding Steward. If you're a climbing animal, like say a spider, a scorpion, what have you, the Spinner of Threads would probably work well for you. A flying animal would probably be the Mosquito Witch or the Whisperer of Wings. And of course, the swimming animal would probably take on the patron theme of the Ripple in the Deep. And with that being said, that is all I have for you today. I didn't put the wizard in here because I didn't think that would be a very common one to take on. But you could certainly have an awakened animal who does take up wizardry, probably to find a way to lose their sentience and go back to being a normal animal. That would be an interesting goal for an animal to have. Now, there was something in the lore talking about a city full of awakened animals known as Rome. That is spelled R-O-A-M. So that could have some ties with your character's backstory. But anyway, what did you think of today's video? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know what type of character you would create with the awakened animal ancestry. But until next time, this has been Drehon, and I am offline.